develop an accessory dwelling unit in the Springs. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have Nicole Ruth from the Fairway, Nicole Ruth from Fairway Mortgage team coming down to talk to us about the market. I'm going to post some stuff on the Facebook group to kind of give some examples of just her knowledge level. It is a pretty big deal that she's coming down, and that's just because she's brilliant and she's the #1 loan mortgage originator in Colorado, and just the knowledge and information that she's provided to a lot of us here has been tremendously helpful as we've all worked through our investing career. Me, Luke, Michael, and some others here have all worked with her to invest in real estate, and so she's made all the difference, and so we thought it'd be immensely beneficial for a lot of you guys to get connected with her, and at the same time hear her perspective on the market. She does know a lot about the Fed and the funds rate and all that stuff. Hopefully it won't be too in the weeds, but we're looking forward to having her, so we'd love to have you guys all join us in 2 weeks. I don't know the exact date of that, but
August 25th.
August 25th.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tanner. Okay, so I'm going to try not to bore you with a lot of this stuff. We're going to go over kind of the nitty-gritty details in the beginning, and then we're going to show nice, colorful pictures of what this actually looks like in practice. And then I'll give you actually some personal revenue numbers so you guys can actually see what a property like this could produce. And so this is a personal journey that I've been through. I know Michael's been through this, maybe a couple others here, just developing an ADU and what it takes. Our go-to ADU guy, Stephen back there, is here to represent. But that being said, let's get started. And if you guys have questions, feel free to just shout them out, raise your hand. I'd rather this be like kind of interactive. So if something doesn't make sense or you have questions on how something works, please let me know. So like I said, the purpose of this meetup is to really just build an environment that is safe, low threat, and where everyone can feel comfortable sharing and learning from each other. And then just provide education. So we'll kind of give you a run through of all of these things, starting with what is an ADU. So they go by a whole bunch of different names: granny flats, laneway houses, because they all usually they sit in the alley of a house or on the lot. Mother-in-law suites, secondary dwelling units. The official definition, according to Colorado Springs, is an accessory dwelling unit, which is an ADU. And then by definition, they're technically smaller than the primary house, and they're independent of the residential dwelling unit. Independent, not in the sense that it can't be attached, but independent living spaces. So we'll talk through some various types of ADUs in a second. And so there's tons of different uses for ADUs. Obviously, some of their names, in-law suites, they were used a lot of times for multi-generational living. This is what a lot of times they're being used for in higher price markets like California and the Bay Area and Seattle. That's how they got their start. Basically, people couldn't afford to live places, and so they would build these additional dwelling units so that they could have their family join in and help supplement their mortgage. People are doing that here, but they've grown in popularity with the rise of short-term rentals and the idea of house hacking, which is why a lot of us are here. So they could be used to reduce housing expenses and then increase cash flow on a property. So if you had a long-term rental in an area that was zoned correctly for short-term or for an ADU, then you could add a whole other structure and bump rents up. And so you can kind of look at all the different types of strategies. And then I put on here to get some space from your in-laws, because I don't know about you, but my in-laws live out of state, and when they come to visit, I don't want them in my area. So I think I might build an ADU just so they don't have to live with me. And I told them this too. They're fine. Actually, it's not just my in-laws, it's my parents too. Anyways. What? Yeah. So different types of ADUs. So there's detached, which is probably the most popular, maybe the most common that we see or that we can recognize. And so, like this would be an example of a detached. You have the primary structure. This is Michael's house, by the way. Primary structure, and then you have a secondary structure, an ADU.
And the guests parked in the yard.
Not on the driveway. And so then you can have attached, or as Colorado Springs, the city of Colorado Springs calls it integrated, which just means it's a part of the home. And this could be either like on the back principal structure. So again, Michael's home again. This was a garage that was converted into an ADU, but it's attached to the primary structure. So it matters the type of ADU you have when trying to permit it, and we'll go through that. And then this would be another example of integrated. So essentially what this looks like is a duplex because it looks like an up-down duplex. But if you want to change principal use and you just want to permit it as an ADU, you can. It's just called an integrated ADU. And then you have something called an accessory family suite, which is an ADU. According to Colorado Springs, they kind of put it in the same area, but it has different regulations as to if you can owner occupy or if you can rent that section out. Technically, an accessory family suite is only for one family to live in. So with an ADU, you can have two separate families, one living in the ADU, one living in the primary structure. With an accessory family suite, you technically need you technically can only have one family living in both the main house and the accessory family suite. So for multi-generational living, you could use an accessory family suite, which would open it up to more zoning throughout Colorado Springs.
It has to be an internal connection to the house, right?
That's correct. Mm-hmm. Did I mess anything up? I think I got it all. Yeah, that's correct. You would need an interior access point between the two units. So, city regulations. I'm not going to go into an extreme depth. If you guys want to know more, City of Colorado Springs has like this whole web page, which basically talks about all of this stuff. They give informational brochures on ADUs, what's allowed, what zone it's allowed to be in, but I'm going to cover the broad scope of what you need to watch out for. So if you were to purchase a property, and you wanted to add an ADU of any kind, I would recommend working through a lot of this stuff on your own, and then I would recommend talking to a city planner to make sure you actually know what you're doing. Because we have personally experienced times when everything seems to check out from what our knowledge is, and then lot size is wrong, or easement or setbacks are wrong, and there's variances around certain things. But you always want to make sure you're checking these things in a due diligence period. So while you have the property under contract, you want to be running through these things to make sure that your idea of adding an ADU is actually a realistic possibility. So I'll hit on a number of these. Zoning being probably the easiest one to check. You can't really mess that one up. If it's in a legal zoning district for an ADU, you can just look on the El Paso County's assessor's website, and that would tell you. Building configurations, number of occupants, kind of talked about some of that stuff. Owner occupancy requirements, whether you can subdivide or not. Lot sizes, height restrictions, and then exterior access. So again, all of those different things can be found in this summary table, and it will tell you which type, and then whether it's allowed, whether it's not allowed, what zoning districts. As you can see, like an integrated ADU, you can be in any, or you can only be in these. For accessory family suites, you can be in any single family district. So you want to be running through all this stuff, but like I said, the one thing that I've learned is there's something called a pre-application meeting. Is that right? Pre-application meeting that you can schedule with the city, and then you basically just tell them what you want to do, and there's no point to really hide anything either, because your intent is to make sure this property meets all the requirements. And so I tell them the address. I say, this is what I want to do. Poke holes in my plan, and they'll check over everything, things I would never even think to check over. And then you can actually say, okay, yes, this is a realistic thing to do. So highly recommend doing that.
Jordan, what was the name of that movie?
Pre-app.
You can actually see, it's public records too, you can see all the pre-app meetings for like the entire city. So you can go see like, why this property fell out of contract 4 times? And then you can like look up that address on like the pre-app, like scroll through all their July meetings and be like, oh, this guy met with them and asked if he could build like a barber shop that is something. It's actually super interesting.
Yeah.
Or you can go like search through who's built ADUs, or just like Control F, like ADU on a huge PDF, and like, oh, this guy's doing it on Dale Street. This guy's doing it on that. This guy was approved. This guy was denied. And why?
And that can be useful. So like, we had a friend who their lot size was too small. They did not go through the pre-application meeting. And they found this out after they purchased the home. Through digging through some of those pre-application meetings, they were able to determine that there was a number of other people who had the same issue that applied for variances, and the city granted them variances. And so then they had some ammo to use. Another thing I'll hint on too is it's always important to know where the city's headed and what they want to know, or what their intent is with the city as a whole. And so right now, their big focus is density in the downtown area. So if something is in line with their overall vision of where they want things to go, they're more inclined to grant a variance. So if they want density in downtown and your property is going to create more density in the downtown area, but it's 200 square feet smaller, just use that as ammo and just say, isn't this what you want? And they're not going to disagree with their own rules and what they're trying to accomplish as well. So it's always important to know and find like a shared interest among who you're talking to. And then just be super persistent too. Our friend pushed for probably 8 months, received no after no after no, and finally one day they were like, you know what, yeah, I think we can. They didn't say sorry, they don't apologize, they don't do anything, they just changed their mind. So you gotta be persistent, but the point I'd really like to make is check all that stuff beforehand, so you don't have to go through that. There are certain things that are easier to get variances on. So setbacks are a fairly common thing, and so it's a little bit easier to get a variance for a setback. A setback is just the distance your building or your ADU is going to be from the lot line. So you have to be 5 feet. Yep. Like I'm
on the sides of 15 foot back.
Okay, there you go.
And then on the 15 foot front. And ADU doesn't matter if it's level with the house, like, as long as it's not in front of the main structure. There just needs to be some reason for the back or something in the back.
Okay.
Cool. There's no distance. Even though the website does kind of say they would like 20 feet from your main residence to the ADU, that's not actually true. So the pre-app meeting is everything. Is some of the information is different. Maybe change it.
Yeah. Thanks.
What happens if you want to convert a garage, but it's already like way closer to those lines?
Variance.
Then you would get a variance.
Variance application.
Yes. How long does this take to process? 4 weeks?
They meet once a month.
Yeah.
If you miss the deadline to apply, then you wait till the next month.
Okay.
So they meet every year. So it's
Cool. So yeah, there are variances for everything. Some are easier to get than others, but schedule a pre-app meeting. Get that out of the way. That will save you a lot of time and energy.
Question. Should you ideally schedule your pre-app meeting before you go under contract to purchase the home?
No, I don't think you should do much before you go under contract. Just make sure it's a decent property. I tell people all the time, there's no fault in going under contract and just not depositing earnest money. Get the property under contract so no one else can then get the house, and then do your due diligence after that. You have tons of ways out of that contract. The first one being you have 3 days to do more due diligence, and by not depositing earnest money right away. And if you decide you don't want to do it, then you just terminate the contract and you don't deposit earnest money. Always get a house under contract first. Finding a contractor. Okay, so this one I've done well and I've messed up on. So the second one was way worse. No. Steven's my contractor on the second one. So I'm going to give an example of the bad that I went through the first time doing this. I had never vetted a contractor. I had never done a large-scale project. My experience was next to none. So I hopped on Facebook and Nextdoor and a whole bunch of apps and just tried to find contractors. Not a terrible idea, but then I think there's more due diligence to go through beyond that. So people can have knowledge, but if they don't have experience doing a certain thing, that can be dangerous. So they may know how to do remodels, but if they've never done a garage conversion, because they're so specific to city regulations and everything that goes into them, you could run into a lot of issues, which is what I ran into, where they didn't know the true cost of what it was going to take to convert. They didn't know any of the laws needed. They didn't have the correct crews in place that could actually execute those things. And so it ended up costing me a lot more in time, holding costs, and just them constantly coming back asking for more money. The other thing I messed up on is what I have down here, which is the scope of work. The scope of work was incredibly vague, which you want them as detailed as possible. And so when you're vetting a contractor and they give you a bid, if it's just an amount, run. Like, there's nothing to hold them to. You want this contract to be something that, not necessarily you fall back on and say you didn't do this, but to say, wait, is that covered or is it not? And if there's too much ambiguity into it, then you just won't know. Or even if they're not like specifying like, we're going to use mid-grade materials, or the more they can specify in those contracts or in that scope of work, the better it's going to be for both parties. Because then you always want to default back to the contract. You want to say, you don't want to like point fingers and say, hey, you're not living up to the contract. You want to say, hey, this is what we agreed on, and then you both come together for a shared interest. I kind of jumped ahead there, but I would say when looking for contractors, leverage your real estate community, leverage groups like this and others to find good contractors that are trustworthy and that are going to do good work. The other thing I would say that is really important is even when you get a referral, look and ask that contractor for more referrals, people that they've worked with. So if they've, for example, the last contractor I used for the garage conversion I'm going to go over, they said they did a garage conversion, they showed me pictures. That's a great first step. I wish I had gone the extra step and said, hey, can I have that person's contact number so I can ask how it was dealing with that person? Because my contractor ended up being very confrontational, had no problem cussing me out and telling me I was wrong. Just in general, not a great person. And so I wonder if maybe she had that similar experience. And I wish I had reached out to her and asked her, and maybe even walked the work that he did to walk her unit and see how it was. So I would definitely say, take your time and do due diligence here. It's not going to hurt you. And like I said, you've got your whole time under contract. Usually when I'm under contract, I bring a contractor in, we walk the property, and then I'll walk it with a couple different contractors, and then that gives me time to get a bid back from them, see if my estimates on what I think the cost is going to be for the specific project, I can kind of work that in. So I definitely recommend taking time to find a good contractor, especially in garage conversion, because this is going to be a lengthy process. I mean, most of them take 4 to 6 months, if not longer, and so it doesn't hurt. You want to take some extra time and actually figure out if you want to work with that person. Okay, so costs, they're not cheap. I'll say that much. There is heavy costs, especially when you look at the amount of plumbing that needs to be done, the amount of just rough plumbing, electrical, HVAC that needs to go into a project. Yes, for a garage conversion, you have an existing structure, but if you were to do ground up, it could be even more expensive because you're having to put in a foundation. Usually it involves trenching to reach your existing water lines and your existing sewer line. So one good thing is always to figure out how close that water line and sewer line are to the structure that you want to convert. And then you have one cost that's always snuck up on me was landscaping. Landscaping does add up. And then holding costs, especially depending on the type of way you're financing it. If you're like, I'm in hard money on one of my garage conversions, it's expensive to hold a property under hard money. And so you have to make sure that you're being conservative with how long you think it's going to take, and also factoring in the added cost of whatever your financing is going to cost you. So you have a couple different ways of financing. Easiest is cash. Not everyone has 100 grand in cash sitting around, no. So what are some other ways? Well, if you own a home, you can pull a HELOC out, and a HELOC could be a good way to then fund renovations on your ADU. You could do a cash out refi, so pulling cash out of an existing property. Again, then you'd be using pure cash, but you're pulling it out of an existing equity in a house. You could use your 401k, and I know some people have done that. I've personally used it for some projects. Depending on how your 401k is structured, you may or may not be able to do that. You can use a personal loan, expensive, maybe not the best option, but it's an option. And then credit cards. Michael? Let me just touch on credit cards. We make fun of credit cards. We say it's super risky. The riskiest thing to do in real estate is not understand your numbers when going into a deal. And so I used a credit card to fund part of the project I'm about to talk about. It may sound risky, but I had 15 months, 0% interest, and I knew my numbers were going to pay that back. So I had 15 months, I paid it back in 3 months. That was better than I expected. But some people are so afraid to use credit cards. But if your numbers work, obviously be conservative with your numbers, but if your numbers work, don't be afraid to take that risk and do what other people aren't willing to do. Because I'll show you how much it has benefited me by being willing to just accept the risk that, like, yeah, it's kind of weird to put it on a credit card. I know that, telling people that is not super favorable. They think, oh, you're an idiot. But I knew my numbers and I had to be confident in that. So don't hate on credit cards. And then you can use construction loans. So not every bank will do it. You'd have to find the right bank or the right lender. But essentially, what you could do is, if you bought a house for $500K and you could add an ADU for an extra $200,000. You could get a loan from the bank for $700,000, so the future value of the home, and then they would then fund renovations for you to build that. So it is an option. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac are looking more and more favorably upon ADUs. They're actually now factoring in ADU revenue when approving you for a loan. So they are becoming much more popular. And then you can also get commercial loans. I've never personally done that aspect of it, but it is an option. Any questions? Yeah, what's up?
Do they still take the vacancy rate on ADUs the same as if you were to go like a multifamily?
It's going to be similar, yeah. So if you have no proof of rental returns, they're going to take 75% of what you estimate it to be, or of what they estimate it to be.
Sure.
Unless like it was a house that the ADU was already rented out. If it was on a leased contract, at that point they're going to take whatever lease is on it. Yeah, so it just depends.
Wait, what happens if your contractors don't take credit cards?
So
What happens if your plumber doesn't take credit cards?
there's always ways around it. There's a company called Melio that can use your credit card and send your contractor a check. Michael's done that. I have done that.
It wasn't a check.
Hey, what?
It was a direct deposit.
Is there something wrong with it?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh.
You can do.
Oh, you can do direct deposit too.
Okay, I was gonna say.
So if you want to use credit cards, there are websites that basically you pay the website and the website sends your contractor a check, or direct deposits them money. There are other ways. If you guys have heard of Amex Send, you can Amex send money. Other sneaky ways around it. So they're not cash advances. Yeah. So you can Amex send to Venmo, and then you can Venmo your contractor. I've done that one. What?
$5,000 a week.
There is a max to it, so you just have to make sure you're. I think my max was $2,000, so which one is $5,000? So there are always ways. If you guys are having trouble funding something, talk to Michael and I. Figure it out for you. There's ways around everything. Yeah, what's up?
Have you dealt with those modular or prefab tiny homes that might cost a little less, maybe like $23,000? I don't know about this information. What do you think about that idea?
I don't think it's a bad idea. Let's see. Here's my initial thoughts, because I've looked into this. So according to Colorado Springs, you can use those as an ADU as long as they're on a permanent foundation hooked up to permanent utilities. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
They don't necessarily want you to have a kitchen. You can possibly have a cooktop.
Okay.
But you can have a bathroom and no kitchen.
Okay. So you can have a cooktop. There are ways around that. Caveats to everything. Here's what I think is important to consider. So yes, they accomplish the same thing, but what is your exit strategy? So with say a garage conversion, you have a house and you have an ADU, and they both can be rented out as feasible long-term structures. So they can be rented out as long-term rentals. I would make sure that with a tiny home, any tiny home that you look to use, it somehow fits the needs of someone that would want to live there long-term. So if it has like a loft bed and it's super tiny, it's going to appeal to a very small market of people that are looking for places to stay. So your exit strategy is kind of hindered. Whereas if you have a traditional home, like I said, and then an ADU, the ADU, if it seems like a livable structure to everyone else, they just feel like they're renting out like a small apartment. So that's the only thing I would say. Just like it takes away an exit strategy if you're too close to a niche of like tiny home or a container home or something that someone doesn't want to live in or that isn't feasible to live in long term.
Or a refi.
Refis would be difficult too. So you'll see in this example that I cash out refi into the HELOC. They're not going to look at those structures the same way. So you're not going to get the same value back from them. Any other questions? Cool. Okay, so now we get to jump into the before and after. So this is a house I purchased in March of 2021. Primary structures up front, it was a 2-1 when I purchased it. And then it had this small 340 square foot garage. I wish I took better before pictures. I honestly don't have a lot. I just wasn't thinking about it beforehand. But as Michael and Luke would describe it, they thought it was going to fall over. It did not fall over.
The outside
So-
looks a lot nicer than the inside did.
I do have some pictures of the inside. So outside, I kind of have like a barn look, and then this is kind of like after. So we didn't touch the primary structure. We left the roof and everything. All we did was fill in the doors, put new siding on the front, and then painted the whole exterior. So we didn't really do a whole lot to the exterior portion of it, and then landscaping. Landscaping around, again, it tends to be a pretty significant cost when you have to add a big, like a patio area. For this specific example, both of these units I'm about to show you are short-term rentals. So outdoor areas sell the place, and so we really wanted to focus on that, which meant putting in a concrete pad, putting in fencing, giving people their own private space. That's what people usually want when they're staying in an Airbnb. So we added a concrete pad here, added some sidewalks, and then fenced it off from our whole backyard for our main house. So this was the downstairs. So I wish I didn't structure this very well. I'm gonna jump ahead. Okay. Okay, so this is the inside. You have, again, I didn't take the best pictures, but the wood was not up to code, so they had to add in a bunch of extra support beams to really get it where it needed to be. But other than that, they got to keep the existing structure and then just put insulation in. So you can see some of the framing. We put a bathroom in this back corner. And then this is what it turned out to be, which I'm still amazed. So you may think it doesn't look like you can develop a garage or develop an ADU. Again, 350 square feet, it's pretty hard to go smaller than that or find a garage that is fitting for smaller than that. But it's amazing how much people love it. It still crushes it as a short-term rental. It's a studio, so there's no wall separating the bedroom. If I had to do it again, I would probably try to find a little bit larger of a garage. But this was back when the market was very competitive, and we were looking for really anything we could do to kind of win an offer and make the deal sweeter. So it was just highly competitive, and so this is what we ended up with. But as you can see, yeah, it turned out great. Yeah, I am. But not cost yet. So then we have a second Airbnb on our property. And so what we did is we had this large, just open downstairs basement space. And so it already had a bedroom, and then it had this giant open space. So what we did, these pictures are kind of close. We added a wall here in a bathroom, which is where this area is. And so we just added a stand-up shower and just plumbing around. And it turned out great. It's a little bit tight, it's a little bit cramped, ceilings are low, but honestly, it still sells really well on Airbnb. And so I know we get caught up on little things. We can find anything to disapprove of a property. We'll walk on a property, oh, the ceilings are too low, I'm hitting my head, or I don't like where this bathroom is situated, or a whole number of things. But the truth is, they're just excuses. If you make a place that's desirable and appealing, people aren't going to complain. So someone that's 6 foot is going to probably scrape their head on this vent here. I've never had a single Airbnb guest complain about it, and I'm sure we've had people over 6 foot. So, so yeah, just be willing to not just discount every property that you see. So this is kind of these are the renovations we did, and so I'm going to take you through the numbers and then kind of show you what you could expect out of that. So our purchase price is $405. We came under appraisal, which happens to me every time, so I'm pretty used to it. So we appraised at $400, so I paid $5,000 in appraisal gap. So total cost for down payment appraisal gap $25,000. The ADU cost, it was about, I was quoted at $5,500 from my contractor, and ended up being $65,000, which didn't include what? Yeah, what did I say? Oh no, $55,000. Sorry. And then it ended up being $10,000 more. And then we also had, this is slightly skewed. I didn't add the landscaping on there, which is probably another $7,000. So you're probably at $121,000 here. But then we had the basement cost, which was to add the bathroom, paint and everything, put new floors in, things like that. And then we had to furnish both units. We were pretty thrifty on our furnishings. I mean, it was smaller spaces that we had to furnish, but furnishings can really add up. Those were one of the larger things that we put on a credit card, just because they are expensive, especially when you've got to buy, 4 sets of linens and beds and anything else, couches with sleeper sofas. I mean, it all adds up. You'd be amazed, all the kitchen utensils. So we put a lot of that on a credit card. Very easy to put it on a credit card. You just go to a store and spend it. Easier than paying a contract with a credit card. So in total, we did a cash out refi on this property after. So it appraised high enough where we were able to get $90,000 just in pure cash. So we basically got most of this cost back immediately. Then we did a HELOC, and we appraised even higher on the HELOC because appraisers are crazy. And so we got $148,000 back from a HELOC. And so that gave us, and then from when we started running our basement Airbnb in June, and then our ADU was up and running in November, we netted a total, after all expenses, of $27,000. So over the course of 1 year, so from February or March when we purchased that property to December, we were able to get a total of cash and credit basically returned or accessible to us of $265,000. Tell me where else you can do that. I don't know. You can't do it in the stock market. But crypto won't do it. Not NFTs. And so that gave us the ability to then go out and purchase another short-term rental. So this is where the snowball effect comes into play, where you keep building up, you keep doing these bigger and bigger things, and it keeps netting you more and more in the long run. So now we look at 22 earnings. So just from now until January to July this past year, from the 2 units, we've gotten a total of $58,000, and that's after all expenses except our mortgage. So we still have our mortgage payment of $2,500. You can negate that out, but we're living for free, and we're still netting that much. And so, again,
where do you live? Where do you live?
I live in the upper unit of this property. I didn't show that, but yeah, so there's a basement unit, and then there's an upper unit. And if you guys want to see the property in more details, I'm filming a Bigger Pocket show on this specific property on Monday, and so I'll just throw it out in the House Hacker group after that. So then we had, consumables of $47,000 for this past year. So needless to say, a very good investment. I'm not gonna lie, all throughout the whole process I was terrified. I didn't know what I was doing. I made a lot of mistakes. Ryan's fixed one of my mistakes, Ryan right here. Hired a really shitty plumber that just did not do anything right. And so Ryan came in and fixed all of his work multiple times. And so, point being, you're gonna mess up. My project was more than I expected it to be. The holding cost was longer than I thought it was going to be. But the thing is, real estate is really forgiving. And so if you can just take action, that's the biggest thing. And then just surround your people who can help you out. The amount of encouragement and just help I got through just Michael and Luke over time. Michael was actually the one that inspired me to do this. We weren't even friends at that time, but we had one mutual friend who said, my buddy's converting a garage. And I said, that sounds cool. and then I look for properties to convert a garage. So just find other people that are doing the exact same thing that you want to do, and just leverage their experience, their network, their resources. Yeah, what's up?
Did you find this property on the market?
I did, yeah. I actually had the seller reach out to me a couple weeks ago in Bigger Pockets, and he was like, "Dude, what the hell was I thinking? Like, I didn't see any of that potential in the property." And so he's like, "Man, I wish I had done that exact same thing and not sold it." But now he's looking into real estate, so now he's interested in actually doing the same thing. So you never know the connections you're gonna make.
How do you insure these properties?
Well, I used to use any old insurance, but Isla has hooked me up. She's helped a lot. It's very important to get valuable or to get quality insurance on your properties, because as you can see, these are huge investments, and so if they're not properly insured, you could really end up pretty screwed, like a lot of people did in Boulder with the fire, the Marshall.
Yeah, I actually have some articles if you guys want.
Oh.
I brought up with me regarding the Marshall fire, but definitely I know that when I've seen this property, it's absolutely stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. Because I'm actually looking at doing this with my basement as well, and I'm in the process of renovating the whole house, and I'm at that point where I need to make this decision if I am or I'm not going to do it. And I am going to do it because there's no reason to when you see these numbers. But I asked Jordan, and I said, "Well, how do you insure them?" He's like, "Oh, I've got this great company. This is what they do." And I said, "Well, just let me see it." I think we were both shocked.
Yeah.
They didn't have any protection or coverage for, I would say, 90% of everything we needed. So it was good that we talked about it. Plus, I still need to pull this one. So I'll be
Yeah, and it's always a good idea. I'll just put a plug in here to always be reanalyzing your current insurance. So with especially the skyrocketing housing values that we've seen over the past couple of years, and the higher labor and material costs, things are more expensive. You need to up probably the insurance amount that you have on some of your homes. So just take a look. It's not going to cost you that much more to up your insurance and make sure you're actually protected.
I think a big thing too to note from this whole thing is just the vision and creativity.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yes, did you find this deal on the market? I mean, except for maybe the one you got coming up, basically everything we've purchased over the last few years has been on market. But we've seen things in these properties that no one else has seen. I think all this experience where we made offers on properties that no one else was making offers on, and not because they were junkers that no one else wanted, but because we saw something and just had a creative idea about it and took a chance on something. He turned a freaking single family house in Oklahoma City with a shack in the back and turned it into 3 freaking units that's living for free and still netting $50,000 a year. On market, it's creativity and grit. Be able to take that chance.
I have 2 properties right now from one from an owner that's looking to sell off market if anybody's interested. So you can talk to me about that. And then another one that's actually by Garden of the Gods as well.
Yeah, any more questions on any of this? This is it. So, yeah.
What are you gonna do when you move out?
That property is going to become a medium-term rental. Yep, in a medium-term all units. It's not eligible for a short-term rental permit.
You can't short-term rent those.
No.
So you'll be 30 days executive rental there.
Yeah, I'll do 30-day executive rentals. Honestly, it would make a great long-term though, because when you add units, you're then contributing to your cash flow. And remember, I bought it at a single-family home price, and so I can therefore benefit from the extra income that 3 other units would bring in. So it could cash flow fine as long-term, but it's already most of it's already furnished. So we're going to do executive rentals. What's up, Steven?
What are the current options for medium-term rentals?
Current options?
Yeah, what are the medium-term options? I hear a lot about the traveling nurses.
Yeah, you can
Is
do.
there others, or where do you go for that?
Yeah, so traveling nurses are good, but the problem is if you're trying to look for high-end medium-term rental rates, you're probably not going to appeal to the medium-term to the traveling nurses. Probably going to be talking to executives or people that just work from home, and they may work in the Bay Area, but they work from home and they don't want to live there anymore, so they're traveling. So,
Website for that?
so we usually, Airbnb is probably our most popular one for medium-term rentals. There are other websites. Furnished Finders is the one people use for traveling nurses. Michael, what other ones?
I mean, we've posted them everywhere, you know.
You can do Facebook
Booking,
Marketplace.
Vrbo, Facebook Marketplace, Furnished Finder, Gypsy Nurses, like all these different places. But we're finding more and more that people are just using Airbnb because it's what they're already used to going to. So they'll just put in 30 days plus, and it's just, I mean, things have changed a lot since COVID, and like, it's scary when you look at your calendar and there's no future booking, and you're like, this is a 30-day rental, and there's no future bookings. And then you get someone booked tomorrow for 47 nights for $8,500. You're like, oh, cool. Like, I was gonna get 2,100 as a long-term rental. And so like, it's a different market and it's a different niche, but we're finding people that are just like, hey, I'm coming out to work at Streeter for 47 nights. So this is what they would have paid to put me up at Marriott, and so I'm paying the same amount to stay at home, has a kitchen, a yard, fire pit, and all this stuff. So we're seeing more and more people move to just using Airbnb and Vrbo as like not going to like Facebook and track. Like, I don't know, I think medium term we instantly think of traveling nurses, and it's like a little different when you make some place like that nice and super like premium, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a follow-up
I
question?
had a big Airbnb like that, that's true.
The lead times are shockingly small. Like
For on
13
on
nights ahead of
Airbnb,
time, 6 nights ahead of time, same day. Luke just had one the other day. It was like 1 week out, and they booked for 31 nights. And we're like, why are you paying $7,200 to stay in half of his duplex? We can stay at my place.
yeah,
Some of it
they,
doesn't make sense, but his wife does great design, and they liked it. So like, it's crazy. It's crazy. Even medium terms, like, okay, city regulations say anything under 30 days you need a permit. Over 30 days, it's a long-term rental.
Yeah.
In the city's eyes, in the state's eyes, and the Fed's eyes, it's a long-term rental. So like, anything over those 30 days, I mean,
But you
it's just
can
a
still
furnished.
list them on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't need like
no.
No.
So-
you just set your minimum nights to 30 days. And
Yeah.
You also avoid like all the. So a lot of people know as a short-term rental, running an Airbnb, you pay lodging taxes just like a hotel does. It's like
10.5%.
Yeah, 10.5%. The second, if someone books 29 nights in a place, they're paying, there's 10.5% lodging tax on there. The second they switch to 30 nights on Airbnb, that lodging tax disappears.
So I know you guys manage both, right? You manage both the short-term Airbnb, 2 nights, and then you do the 30 plus days. Do you find that they're actually more difficult to rent at the 30? Because I feel like that would be maybe harder than people transiently coming through. I mean, do you have more vacancy for that metro? Or you're just
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, it's not every night. Like, you might have a week
Yes.
or 10 days or even 2 weeks in between.
And
which-
then do they yield as much profit as the short-term rental? Because I wouldn't think.
No, short-term rentals still
Definitely.
better. But
Could be like anywhere from 50 to 75% of your short-term rental revenue.
Okay.
That's pretty accurate.
it's kind of hard to justify it because furnishing can be so expensive. Like, if you furnish it yourself, you can do really well. And like, instant you hire like a designer and like someone to like put together all the IKEA furniture you bought. Like, it's expensive. But like, if you're thrifty or doing it all yourself and stuff, like, you can furnish it cheap and still do a lot better than a long-term rental. But like, trying to take a long-term rental medium if you're gonna pay someone else to do the whole thing is
Yeah.
not a great return. So like, it's kind of a sweet spot. I think it makes sense when like you move into a place, you can take advantage of short-term as long as you can. You move out, hope you're still might get lucky and be eligible. If not, switch to medium because you've already paid for all the furnishings. It's like an easier like transition. Because like, we have a long-term reach out to us and like, here's our place. I'm like, furnishing's expensive. Like, how much are you gonna do? Like, how much
short term, it usually makes sense to pivot first to a medium term strategy if you can't short term anymore, and then to a long term. So if you're looking at doing a short term and you're trying to run like contingency plans, your next contingency after a short term would be a medium term, and then after that it would be do the numbers work as a long term, just because there is a high furnishing cost.
Yeah, medium's been great, like shockingly great. It's weird. You don't know where these people are coming from or like what they're even doing. Like, I don't know. It's just a weird market of like people are like, yeah, I'm getting paid well and I'm remote. I'm just gonna travel and stay in different Airbnbs. So they want like a desk, they want to plug in with me, or they want to like have good internet. And then they don't care that like they might be in a lower unit or an upper unit or even that they just want like a nice place to stay, or even a little bit more niche is like someone executive that can travel and work from home, but also as a family. Like that even is like more niche of like I don't want to be able to overload someone. I want like a nice home. It's already furnished. I want to show up with our luggage and have internet paid for, trash paid for, utilities paid for. I don't have to put these in my name. I don't have to do all sort of stuff. I show up. I'm here for 2 months, and then we're going to Bozeman, and then we're going to Scottsdale. Or like they like kind of bounce around. It's like I don't think it's like super newer. It's just easier to do it now than it was before. And then companies are allowing it more than they were before. So it's like, and they might be running that place at home. Like you, so like you don't even know. It's just a lot of stuff's changed and like it's opened up opportunities for people to like take advantage of.
Yeah, another strategy we don't talk about a lot here too is rent by the room. So that could be another pivot strategy. So where you could get $1,200 for rent, if you can get $700 from both people, then you're looking at $1,400 instead of $1,200. Another good pivot strategy to always consider. Dev, you had a question?
Short term versus long term, everything matter on the season? Like short term is more seasonal.
Yeah.
But how about
I'll default to Michael on this one. Is short term more seasonal than medium term?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Memorial Day to Labor Day is just crazy. It's nuts how many people come here for. I mean, a lot of us are new here. A lot of us have been here a while. And it's like I grew up here and I'm like shocked how many people are like, oh, I'm coming for a Taekwondo competition or a hill climb or the U.S. Open or like, oh, I forgot we even do that. Like, there's so many events that happen here.
but
that
you
the
get
summer
like
is
more
just
long term and off season?
Yeah, we're too far from the ski resorts, unfortunately.
Okay.
And then there's just a lot of like competition during those off months. I mean, you still are profitable, but it's just way less. And it's not like you're losing money and you're going bankrupt. It's like it's just not as like sexy as
And
Memorial
that
Day to Labor Day. It's just insane.
that kind of dictates too, like when you would want to take on a project like a garage conversion. Ideally, it would be like right now would be the perfect time to be looking for a property to convert a garage because you're moving into a slower season, and so you're gonna not like your opportunity cost is a lot less. The amount of money you're gonna miss out on by not having an active unit
So
is a lot less.
You did.
What?
Go through what you did.
No, I continue to buy in the spring, so not a good idea. It's okay. That's my year of intent deadline. But now my year of intent's gonna be in the fall, so I'm hitting it good for now. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one. So
What's
how
up,
is
Reed?
when you come across a property, so say for your property, you're ready to sell it, it's turnkey ready, but it's no longer up to code, is that responsibility on the homeowner or purchaser, or how you go about that process?
No longer no longer up to code because of what?
Say you went to a property that you didn't know if it was up to code or not, but they sold it to you, say, it's ADU, it's good, you didn't go through the pre-application process.
Yeah. So if I'm gonna do a large scale project like this, I'm gonna pull permits. I'm gonna do it the right way because I want it to count on resale. But if it's a smaller project, I'm okay not pulling permits and then just taking that risk that at resale, I might be hurt. I think it depends how you approach it. So I approach every property I buy as a 30-year investment too. So me not pulling permits on a property isn't a huge risk to me if I chose to, because I'm holding the property for 30 plus years. And at that point, they're going to say, at what point within this 30 years was this bathroom added? So yeah, it could hurt on resale. Like the biggest thing I see, so there's been a property that's been on the market for probably 6 months plus. It's a 3-unit, but it's in an R1 zoning district. So they're not even close to being within their legal limit. It was just recently remodeled. No one wants to touch it, and they're trying to sell it at a triplex price range too. And that's where you're going to run into issues if you try to do something like that. Especially like as a home flipper, if you were to try to do something like that, like I could buy a single-family home and add 2 more units, and now I can sell it at triplex level. But if you don't actually do it the correct way, then you're going to run into issues. Yeah, but over 30 years, it's not going to really matter. And then I do pull permits on a lot of the stuff I do. If it's smaller, I'm less inclined to pull permits. Now the permitting process does slow things down. It will slow your ADU project down, but I'm willing to accept that just so that it's done the correct way. Not to mention, so in the bathroom here, I didn't pull permits. I thought it would be fine. Well, I got screwed by my plumber because he didn't, an inspector would have done a whole test on it. They would have made sure that it's a sealed system. They would have checked all that stuff so I wasn't running into issues. I didn't have leaks. That's kind of the risk you take by not pulling permits.
Is time the only cost, or is there like a monetary value to the permits?
There's a monetary value, but it's
Depends
not
on the
super
season.
expensive.
Like you said, if you're buying now, the opportunity costs a lot less because the rates go down and the demand goes down. But if you are keeping it late during the summer, that's prime money. And so
Yeah.
there is a time and a money cost.
Yeah, but as far as the actual permits, they're not super expensive. I mean, a couple grand maybe, depending on what kind of permit you're pulling. There's additional requirements. You might have to hire an architect or someone to draft your plans, stuff like that. But overall, there's not a ton of cost other than like if you're going to approach it in the winter months and you pull permits, your opportunity cost is a lot less because rates aren't as high. For sure.
Do you think that it's a good idea to, like, if it's an attached garage? I know you talked a lot about detached garages. What about attached garages? Converting those into
If you're in a good zoning district for it, I think it's fine.
I think it takes away though from the value because if you were to resell that, not to say that you want to resell anything, but if you were, what's the value of that being? I know some people would see value in having an ADU, or some people might just like to have a garage.
Yeah. I think it depends on how the home is situated. If it's like if you're talking about like a small little garage and then the house is like kind of up and around it, like maybe not the highest and best use. If it's purely just an attached garage on the side or on the back, like Michael's property, I don't think it's a big deal. Again, I would say, what is your strategy? Are you planning to sell in the next 5 years, or are you planning to sell in the next 30 years? Because if you're converting that garage, you're looking for additional cash flow. And so that's going to be what you want over the next 30 years. If you're looking for appreciation, yes, maybe that's not the highest and best use, and maybe in 5 years when you go to sell, you're not going to get the value you want. So I would it depends on your strategy. But I would say as a buy and hold investor, it's more beneficial to convert the garage, even if it's not the highest and best use. Cool. Well, thank you.